Otaku fandom. Today we are going to be talking about the very first arc from Tokyo Revengers, the Battle of August 8th, 3rd. Sorry, I'm about to say 8th. But anyways, this arc begins with meeting our main character, Takemichi. Takemichi works at a dead end at a video store, or is it a bookstore? It's one of those two, and he is getting low wage, and he's not very good at his job to the point where the manager, I believe, fires him in the first episode, or tells him that he's doing a very poor job. So later, he is back home watching the news in his dirty apartment, and he sees that he sees a familiar name. His ex-girlfriend in the past, in middle school, Hina, had died, had died, had died in a truck collision. A truck had hit her and a friend, I believe. He is a little distraught and sad, but he starts thinking about this throughout the whole night, and also later in the beginning of the morning while going to work on the train. While he's waiting for his train in the train station, in the train platform, somebody from behind pushes Takemichi onto the trail on the train tracks, and he starts to panic and sees the train lights and believes that he's seeing his life before flashing before his eyes, but in actuality he's been sent back in time 10 to 12 years into the past. Much later, he would look at himself, seeing himself in the mirror, saying that he made some really ridiculous life choices during his middle school days, and is hanging out with his friends, and remembers slightly how they wanted to join a gang, and later they are beaten up by a bunch of gang members who are real gang members and beats them up senselessly, while one of them is paying for all of their drinks, and later he gets beaten up and one, even though they were trying to protect him. Takemichi and the gangs then later split up and decide to go home, and Takemichi just spends his time in the park and sees a kid getting bullied by other people, by some group of kids, so he decides to stand up to them, and they start running away. And Naoto is scared of Takemichi due to the look that he's wearing is basically a delinquent look, and he tells him that he has to stand up for himself. He writes all this down in a notebook, and Takemichi's like, "You don't need to write this down." And they introduce to himself, and it turns out that this is Naoto. Naoto is an important element throughout this story because it will trigger some. It would He's the trigger of something, which I'll explain within this video. But anyways, he tells him his story, that he's from the future and that his sister will die in 10 to 12 years from a truck hitting her. He would remember this in the back of his head, Naoto, as he shakes his hand, and Takemichi's back into his present timeline and sees himself hooked up to an IV with a mysterious person next to him. The mysterious person next to him reveals himself to be Naoto from the future. Naoto had become a police detective, and uh, he had that conversation that he said that his sister would die from a car accident. He kept it in the back of his head, not fully remembering it, but then remember as soon as he saw the TV screen, remembering what Takemichi had told him in the past, and believed that Takemichi was able to time travel, so he went looking for him and saved his life before the train hit him, killed him. Now Naoto the question is, why did Naoto save him? Naoto had saved him because of his future ability, and that they could possibly save his sister from dying in the future, because the people who were responsible for that truck collision is the Tokyo Manji gang. The Tokyo Manji gang is one of the most infamous gangs in the story of Tokyo Revengers, and it's one of the strongest, considering two key players: Mikey, the leader of the Tokyo Manji gang, and his right hand man, Kisaki. Kisaki, who was very dangerous, but very little information was known about him. But a lot was known about Mikey since he was charismatic, but he hasn't been made an appearance around the gang in such a long time, which makes you question what happened. So it's Takemichi's mission to investigate that, to go in the past, join them, and stop both Mikey and Kisaki. But at the time that he has joined, he does his mission. Takamichi discovers that Kisaki isn't in the gang at the moment. He doesn't even know who Kisaki is. But Kisaki remains in the back thought of his, as right now his mission is to join the Tokyo Manji gang. And remember the group of people that were beating up Takamichi and his friends? Well, it turns out one, some of them are from that gang, and they are doing fight clubs to initiate new members. Takamichi does the hazing of the bike club, and then he mentions about Mikey's name. He asking when will he meet Mikey, and he gets mad. The tall guy that was in the group who looked to be a high schooler, he showed up. He got pissed, grabbed the baseball bat, and beat the living hell out of Takamichi with his bat. Next time you ever mention that name, I'll kill you. There's some hostility within the gang, apparently. This guy really doesn't like Mikey and wants to be his own boss or even take over the Tokyo Manji gang. But this guy wasn't really a big name in the group, so I wouldn't deem him as a threat. Now, moving on from deeming him as a threat, his gang was surprised that he went to this heights to beat them, but they still followed him. Later on, Akun is a very important factor in this particular arc because a few things happen to him. So Takamichi is in the fight club and he's about to fight Kiyoya. I think his name was Kiyoya, the tall guy. I might be wrong, but he was ready to fight him. But what he didn't know is that Akun was gonna do something very drastic. He needed to change that. He later finds out that his buddy Akun was in was it was gonna stab Kiyoya in the back because his friend was about to do the Fight Club initiation where he was gonna be beaten up by Kiyoya. So Akun stabs in the back and he gets sent to Jubi. Takamichi goes into the future later on. He goes into the future, meets Akun. Akun and him are talking, and it turns out that Akun is part of the Tokyo Manji gang and runs a business for them. They talk and they go up to the roof, and then he tells him that he was the one who pushed Takamichi on the train. And he is surprised because he wanted to know if he had those abilities, and tells him that he's scared. He's scared of their leader, Kisaki. He's a very scary dude, and he can't get away from him. So he says, "Well, this is the end for me," and jumps off the building that they're in. Mikey, Takamichi cries. I keep confusing because they're both. Takamichi cries of this, and in the background, like in a building, we see Kisaki on the phone, staring from far, looking at the incident that happened with Akun killing himself. Akun says that you're our baby cry hero because he's always the person to save someone, and he showed up. And he's telling Akun that hopefully he could change the outcome of the future, which makes Takamichi determined to find out how to change this future. He also finds out that Draken is dead. in the future. But this is before no, this is after the talks with Akun. But Takemichi goes into the fight to take his friend's place and fights Kiyoya. But before he's about to he enters a no, he does enter a brawl with Kiyoya, but I know it's not Kiyoya. I think it's something else, but I don't remember the name. But Mikey and Draken make their appearance. They're all surprised. Oh my god, what's he doing there? It's Mikey being the commander of the Tokyo Manji Revengers and the right hand man, Draken, showing up. Draken and Nike are just walking by, and one of Kyoya's friends goes up. I'm this guy from this division of the bike gang, and he goes on to say, and Mike Draken just tells him, "Did he ever asked who you were? Did he ever address you?" He's like, "No, sir." And then he goes up to Kiyoya, and Draken just kicks him in the stomach, and Mikey goes on to tell him, "Did you I ever authorized to do these fights?" And he says, "No." He says, "No, I'm just looking for potential." And Mikey round does a roundhouse kick to his face, dropping Kiyoya right away. And everyone is like, but Takamiki makes goes up to Takemichi and finds Takemichi interesting for his actions that he did to protect his friend. Akun is in relief that he doesn't have to stab Kiyoya anymore, and that's what happens. Apparently, Takemichi and Mikey become good friends after that, just because of that one action that Mike Takemichi, and so he's closer to his goal now. Mikey says, "Let's be friends," and then the next day he's in his middle school class, and they're going on to talking about the different divisions of the Tokyo Manji gang and what people and what positions. But out of the blue, Mikey and Draken show up into his middle school and looking for Takamichi and asked him to come over. But that's when Hina sees this and goes up to Mikey and slaps him and saying that you shouldn't be taking Takamichi out of school. What gives you the right? And most of the people were afraid. Even Takamichi was afraid for Hina's sake. Yeah, but he reconnects with Hina in this arc and starts their relationship, and this is where the relationship starts. But I know I'm missing a lot of things, but I'm just trying to get to the main point, which is when Takamichi is invited into the Tokyo Manji gang. So he meets he meets Draken. He meets he goes with them. He says, "Nah, you could meet us after school," and then they leave behind. They leave, even though it looked like Draken was gonna do something and Mikey, but they didn't because he said he doesn't hit women, and that was a solid slap. And then Hina was misconfused about this and not misconfused, like misinformed about things, and uh, Mikey kind of also was in the wrong in this point, but he apologized and left, and Hina was like surprised, even though he was supposed to have a date with Hina. He decided that he had to go with Mikey, and plus she had what do you call those remedial studies? Like she had to do more extra classes because of certain classes not up to grade. She doesn't have the grades for the her regular classes, so she needs to make it up in remedial classes. That's what it's called. There you go. So yeah, he hangs out with Draken and and Mikey. Takamichi wonders why he chose to be his friend, and Mikey gives him the. Well, it wasn't Mikey, it was Draken. Draken goes on to tell him that he says that you remind him of his older brother. But Mikey chimes in, but he was more cooler. Oh, and he has a very lovely time with Draken and Mikey, which he starts to believe. How is he the cause of the what happens in the future? and he can't believe it. So he walks away, and this is where the first instance of meeting Kisaki also shows up. As soon as Mikey Takemichi walks away from after his fun with Mikey and Draken, he crossed paths with Kisaki, but he doesn't know it, and Kisaki doesn't even notice Mike Takemichi, but he's walking with two other people with a bunch of other gang members from another gang, which now I could talk about. Mobius. Mobius is a gang that later will interact with the Tokyo Manji Revengers gang and try to come after them. As Pa's best friend and no, Pa's friend, which he is the third division captain of the Manji gang the Manji gang, he it, he discovers that his friend and his friend's girlfriend were assaulted. This is something that we see by Draken and Mikey. Mostly Draken shows this to Mikey, and Mikey sees it, which will influence his decision. And we also meet the parents. Mikey is very how do you say, headstrong, because he was about to get into an argument with the girl's father of the one that had been assaulted by Mobius, and they go after they apologize and bow their heads, and even though the dad was mad, he was broken down to see his daughter beaten up and unconscious, which I would agree, that was sad, but it was also respectful of Draken to bow down and apologize, because it was their fault, to be honest. Because since she was connected by her boyfriend, who was connected with the leader of the third division, Pa, which Pa wants to get revenge on him, and Mikey does agree with it, that they were supposed to fight at a certain time, but he has to prevent this. Mike Takamichi believes that he has to prevent the fight between Mobius and you know the Manji gang. But things escalate when they make their appearance. The leader of the Mobius and and members of his gang show up in the warehouse where they're having a meeting. Mike Takamichi's trying to tell Pa to stop, that he shouldn't, but Pa keeps beating him up because he doesn't like what he's saying, and then he gets into a fist fight with the leader of Mobius, who turns out to be an amateur boxer, and beats him up. And Pa, unconsciously, is still fighting, but he passes out, and Mikey says, "Let me take this one." And Mikey fights against the leader of Mobius, but was able to beat him in one kick. But the police were called. But before the police were called, Pa comes in the back and stabs the leader of Mobius in the back. In the back. And he says he'll take the fall, even though Mikey's saying, "We no, come with us," but Pa takes the fall. The guy who got stabbed survived, and Pa gets sent to prison. But this is where we would also learn something else. But after Paul's second in command would be mad at Mikey for not helping Pa, because Draken had convinced him that we can't do anything for him. So he is mad at Draken. Draken, where he wears this will be later planned out, as Mike Takamichi will later discover that Mikey becomes this person in the future, because Draken dies on August 3rd by information that Naoto gives him when he goes back into the future, and he has decided that, hey, I'm not gonna return until I solve this problem. He tells Naoto, and he goes off. So we're closing into the festival. Things are working to plan, and Pa's friend, which is Piang, Peang, Peang, Pehan, who gets emotional that you guys are not helping Pa, and decides to commit treason against the gang. which then later we'll find out a new gang shows up, which Mobius has been overtaken by a new gang leader named Hanma. Hanma would be a powerful for Mikey as he shows up with his gang. But before this whole gang, Mikey, Takemichi, and Draken are on dates with Emma and Hina. You know, make Takemichi with Hina and Draken with Emma. They're in a festival. They're enjoying themselves, but Takemichi overhears a meeting with Kyoya and his friends that he will kill Draken. Once they find him out, they beat him up and tie him with tape. Hina finds him. He cries and says that he's pathetic, that he's a loser. But Hina gives him some words of encouragement and tells him that I like you for who you are, not because of somebody else, which gives him encouragement and pursues to find Draken, find Draken and prevent his death. Then Mitsuya pulls up, and then a bunch of gang members start showing up. Draken, Takemichi, and Mitsuya are fighting against the gang. But right as soon as the whole gang's about to assume attacking, the reinforcements come. All of the Tokyo Manji gang shows up from every division shows up to fight against them and starts the battle of the August 3rd. It's this new reformed Mobius, which will later be Valhalla, fighting against, you guessed it, the Tokyo Manji gang. In the midst of this, Takamichi's looking for Draken and doesn't see him, but he sees Kyoya, and he sees bloodstains on him, which he panics and thinks of the worst and sees Draken passed out on his knees. Piang, the guy who commits the treason and gave information to the other gang, to the Valhalla? No, at the time it's still Mobius, but then it'll become Valhalla. He tells him, "Hey." Mikey comes up to him and says he forgives him, which he starts crying because he didn't know that he was trying to say Pa, and he starts crying and panicking because he did something terrible. In the midst of this, Takamichi is taking Draken away from the violence and tries to drag him to the nearest, to try to drag him out of the area to protect him. Emma and Hina come to see and call the ambulance, but then Kyoya and his little group come out of nowhere saying, "Oh, I didn't finish the job," and he decides to finish it. But Takamichi steps in to protect Draken. Draken would later will be somewhat conscious, and it will be Takamichi versus Kyoya. Kyoya has a knife and stabs it right into his right hand, right through. Takamichi's like panicking and everything, but he pulls out the knife, showing that he's not afraid. So he goes to tackle Kyoya. Kyoya's tall, and he doesn't feel that. So he grabs him, but Takamichi doesn't let go, and he's elbowing to the point where he bites him, and then he's like, "Oh, you little!" And then Mikey jumps on him. Takamichi jumps on him, puts him in a headlock, choking him out, slowly making Kyoya pass out, and he wins the fight by making Kyoya pass out. His other friends are in shock, but see that the numbers are in their favor. Draken stands up and says he'll fight alongside, even though he's injured. But comes in his here comes the help. Akun and friends come in to help Takamichi and start fighting. And he's very excited to see Akun still alive due to the trauma that he suffered in the future. But the battle commences and the police are nearby, and then the small group decide to scatter, leaving Kiyoya behind. But it doesn't matter, safety for themselves, and they run away. Draken is sent to the hospital, but he's in critical condition along with Mikey, and Draken says thank you for saving us and thank you for saving the Tokyo Manji gang. And he is in the hospital. He's recovering. Mikey shows up, cool as a cucumber. Pieing is still, I don't know, the other guy is like Pech. Pech is still there's panicking and all that stuff. Mitsuya is there as well as well. And this is when Takemichi would officially join the Tokyo Manji gang after we find out that Draken recovers. Mikey starts crying away from them because he's very thrilled and happy that his best friend did not die on him. And I'm sorry if this video is too long, but there is a lot of things in the first chapter, in the first arc. So I'm very sorry. So Mikey and Takemichi have a meeting, and Mikey says that he wants him to join the gang. And Mitsuya shows up. Mitsuya is the second division captain, uh, and he says Mikey tells Mitsuya to add Takemichi into his ranks, and Mike Takamichi acting like a dork thanks him. He's like, and he says he starts to regret to overhearing the conversation, which is hilarious. But he's now part of the Tokyo Manji gang, and he has to work for it. So later we would Mikey would start a meeting and would introduce to the third new captain. No, the new third division captain, which would be revealed to be Kisaki. But before that actually happened, Mikey, I mean Takamichi, goes back in time and goes back to his present time and sees that Hina is alive and that Naoto is happy and that they both did it. They both were able to save Hina, and he decides to take him with him to visit her. So they do. They go off and visit. He's very nervous, and they arrive to the floor where she lives, and he can't do it. So he starts walking down the stairs, and he bumps into her, which he's shocked. Which he goes with her to her house, and it's awkward. It's very silent. They're like, and Naoto's like, oh my god, I'm leaving. This tension is too much. And Naoto's like, no, no, no. But they decide that they're going to go to an amusement park, which they do. But Naoto has to pull over because he has to do some desk work. He has to work on a case that the office has called him. So he goes off, and it's just Hina and Takamichi going to the amusement park, which they do. Hina talks about how she was in love with this one person and how this person took her to here. Takamichi feels pain just her talking about a past boyfriend, which, funny enough, it's actually about him, which she later asks, "Why did you break up with me, Takamichi?" And he's like surprised because he doesn't remember this happening because the past had changed, and he's surprised that this outcome had came out. Apparently, Takamichi and her break up around December, I believe. Yeah, around December, he breaks up with her. There is it's explained in the later arc, like I think around the Dragon arc. Yeah, in between the Black Dragons and the Yokohama event uh, uh arc. But anyways, yeah, they break up. So he's surprised and he has to go to the bathroom because he's too nervous for this. So he goes into the bathroom and he bumps into none other than Hanma, the leader of Valhalla. I forgot to mention after the fight in the fight, Hanma gets saved by a member of a new gang that he created, which is called Valhalla, which was taking some old members from Movius into it, or taking the members of Movius and all other people that they had. Which the gang was actually created by yours truly, Kisaki. But that's explained in another video, which I might make a video about Kisaki's plan. So be looking forward for that. But anyways, Hanma shows up and he says, "You're not in the car." Oh damn. And he just walks away. Then he remembers that's Hanma because of the tattoos of sin and punishment on on his arms, on his hands, on the back of his hands, and he's so he runs to the car and he sees it's still okay, but a black SUV is like in the alleyway right in across from where Hina's brother's car was parked, and it comes zooming down the road and crashes into Hina's car, also totaling the black SUV. Well, it was not an SUV, it was a black Hummer. And in the black Hummer, it's revealed to be Akun. Akun has killed himself again, but has killed Hina as well. But before I forgot a detail. Before he went to meet Hina because he saved her, and he his brother Naoto wanted to show that his efforts were were paid off. He decides to go meet Akun first, which he is a hair salon. He works at a hair salon. He's a barber apprentice or something, a hairstylist apprentice, and he decides to cut Takemichi's hair. But it turns out that he was still working with Kisaki and the Tokyo Manji gang, because it turns out that they had threatened his family or kidnapped his family, so he had to do this. And he says, "I'm sorry, I thought you were in the car. Cry baby hero, don't cry." He said the same thing he said when he committed suicide off the building of that he owned as in the former future. It was sad, but nothing was as sad for Takemichi trying to save Hina and Hina pushing him away, saying that she did not want the person that she loved to die along with her, and pushes her. And Takemichi is about to run in, but the fire hits, and boom, it blows up both cars. And Takemichi there crying. And from that day forward, he promised that he will be the one running he'll be reaching the top of the Tokyo Manji gang but as soon as he returns into the future, he finds out that Kisaki, the one behind all of this, is the new third division captain, and he punches Kisaki right in the jaw. He's not even a member at this point, because after he punched Kisaki, Kisaki would tell him, "How do you want your punch, face or gut?" He punches him right in the face because he probably already prepared for his gut, and square knocks him out. He is he wakes up, and Mikey says a certain thing. He tells him that he has a mission, and this starts the bloody Halloween arc. Is that Takemichi's mission is to bring Banji back, because Banji said he was quitting, and Baji was said he was gonna quit, and he beats up Takemichi, but he was trying to save Takemichi from a much harsher beating. So kudos to Baji. Baji said he was leaving and that he was joining Valhalla. Mikey's a little bit mad at this, and Takemichi explains his actions, that he really doesn't like Kisaki, and he says, "You know what?" Mikey says, "You know what? I'll give you the chance. If you save Banji and bring him back to the Tokyo Manji gang, I will kick out Kisaki from the gang. But at this time, we're gonna need his strength because he had contacts, connections, and also convince some members of Morpheus to join the Tokyo Manji gang." And also, the deal is that that Kisaki came to Mikey saying, "Hey, I could get Pach within out of jail within a year, and that's why he's the third division captain because of the deal. So that's how the battle of August 8th ends. It ends with the beginning of the new arc, which is the Bloody Halloween. Bloody Halloween is very tragic because that's where we get our first death in the series, and it's very sad. But anyways, that is it for the Battle of August 8th. No, sorry, August 3rd. Anyways, what do you think about the anime, since it's almost about to come out? Well, actually, this week is the last is going to be airing the last episode of Tokyo Revengers, and who knows, we might get a pleasant surprise of a release date for next year. At the moment, they could only do the other two arcs because currently we're in the final arc in the manga at the moment. So we don't know. Probably they'll do the Yokohama and the Black Dragon arc because those are the next two, and then the current arc that's currently, which is the last arc for the whole series according to the author. But anyways, what? Tell me what you think about Tokyo Revengers the anime. Tell me what you think about the anime, the manga, if you've read it. And do you like this series in general? Because I felt I started to like it as soon as I decided I'm gonna watch it after I just saw the trailer from the Tokyo, not the Tokyo, from the Crunchyroll Awards this year that came out. They aired the trailer. I was like, you know what? I'm watching that. It looked interesting, and you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and have a good day. Have a good day. Good night. Peace.